Hey everybody, I'm Timu Fat Electrician. I'm less interesting, less intelligent, less handsome Nick Freitas. I'm Rich Brown, co-founder of Honorbound Fit and event director of Guide on 22, and live from my Gunny's basement, this is Beyond Impact, a show that spotlights veterans who found purpose after service, proving that the fight for impact, brotherhood, and meaning doesn't end when the uniform comes off. My guest today is Sean Steinway, who spent 4 years in the Marine Corps as an 0311, then transitioned to local law enforcement, went on to DEA, and now is a Stafford County Sheriff's Deputy, who's also running for the 65th District Delegate of Virginia. Welcome, Sean.
Thank you very much, Rich. I really appreciate you having me here tonight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or today. Sorry.
Yeah, I acquired a practice from Diary of CEO because they do something really interesting that I don't see other podcasts do, and that's that at the end of their show, they ask their guests to leave a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest is.
Okay.
They have this really fancy leather-bound book that they do it in. I have a
look.
I haven't covered it in drawings yet. I may let you leave a drawing in it if you want.
Oh, I don't think you wanted me to put a drawing up there.
The question from our last guest, which is Luis Martinez of Whiskey Valor Foundation, asks, what is your favorite whiskey and how can a community better promote responsible drinking?
Wow, that's a great question. I'm a bourbon guy. So bourbon is my jam. I do have a couple of bourbons that I prefer, but honest to God, and I think sometimes people think, higher price makes a better bourbon or a better whiskey. And I'm not a believer of that. I actually, my go-to is Henry McKenna. That's my go-to every day. If I want to have a little drink, that's it. But if I'm gonna spoil myself, I guess I got the Henry McKenna 10-year, which is actually pretty good, and I like me some Shoulder Monkey or Monkey Shoulder. What's it called?
I've heard good things of Monkey Shoulder.
Monkey Shoulder.
I've had it myself.
I said it backwards. Remember, Spanish, English.
Yeah, I get it.
So responsible drinking comes from being an adult, correct? And I think we all need to hold each other accountable. Not only to ourselves, but also to our friends. And that's how you take care of each other, right? That's the brotherhood. And whatever you do, just don't get behind the wheel after you've been drinking. That's the deputy answer.
All right, fair enough. What originally led you to raise your right hand and swear the oath to the Constitution?
That's a great question. I grew up in Guatemala City. That's where I was raised. My mom is from Guatemala. My dad is from California. And my parents got divorced when I was a baby. And my mom took me back to Guatemala. That's where I was raised. And all my life, I always played. My grandfather was a lieutenant colonel in the Guatemalan military. And he was the one that raised me. And so I was raised with military values. I remember playing, G.I. Joes like every other kid. We did have G.I. Joes in Guatemala, by the way. It's not like we live in the jungle or anything like that. For all you viewers out there, actually, Guatemala is very beautiful. But grew up watching war movies, the Rambos, the Chuck Norris missing in action, all that stuff. And that was my passion. Another thing was chips. That's why I'm a cop now. You know what I'm saying?
I love chips.
Oh, dude, me too.
Did you watch the remake movie?
I did.
With Dak Shepard. And,
I did. It wasn't bad, but it was not chips,
No.
And I'll get to that point later where chips comes in play in my police life.
All right.
But no, I was always about the military. I always loved the military. And growing up, I didn't know much about the United States military. And I remember watching cable TV when cable TV became, a popular thing, and watching the commercials for the Marine Corps, and my stepfather used to work at the U.S. Embassy in Guatemala. And I remember riding my bicycle to go visit him. And every time I would go over there, I could see that Marine in Post 1. And back in the day, the Marines at the embassy used to wear dress blues in Post 1, which was very impressive, and I used to see this guys over there. I'm like, man, that looks badass, like those dudes are awesome.
Yeah.
And I always had that thought in my mind, but I really never paid that much attention to it. But I knew that caught my eye. And I remember going to a concert one time in Guatemala, and started pouring down rain. It was fucking brutal. And I was freezing my ass off. I had no cover, dumbass kid. And this yoked out motherfucker comes up to me, and he hands me this sweatshirt. He's like, here, take this, And I said, oh my God, who the hell is this guy, right? And he was an American guy. And he says, listen, wear it, get dry, and whenever you're done with it, just drop it off by the Marine House. He's like, I'm a United States Marine. And I was like, that marked me. I was like, man, this motherfucker just came to save me,
I was going to die.
I was going to die. I was like, oh my God, rain, But I went back to the Marine House to return the sweatshirt. I didn't acquire it like you did that book. But I actually had integrity, you know what I'm saying? And I took the sweatshirt back, and he gave me a tour of the Marine House and actually talked to me about the Marine Corps a little bit. And I was older, so I was able to understand a little bit more. And I came home and I told my mom, I said, my mom wanted me to go to college. And she's like, well, you're getting ready for college or whatever. And I said, you know what? I think I'm going to join the Marine Corps. And she said, what? Nope, that's not going to happen. And I said, no,
Not my son.
Not my son.
Oh.
Well, there's another story about that, right, that I'm really not proud of. But my mom is like, hey, I used to party at the Marine House. I said, Mom, please don't tell me this. This is something I don't want to hear about. You know what I'm saying? And it was funny because I understood it afterwards, not before I was in the Marine Corps, But yeah, that was that actually marked me. I think that Marine coming out to me and handing me his sweatshirt kind of made that commitment to me, and I admired that. And I started digging in about the Marine Corps. My cousin that was here, and he was living in California, he actually sent me some brochures, and we actually joined the Marine Corps together. So we went into the buddy program, and I flew out to California, and I enlisted out of the Thousand Oaks office, and it was the best decision I ever made. The Marine Corps made me who I am today, and it actually changed my life. And one of the things was I had this other kid that was an American kid. Guatemala has a lot of American schools. And there was this American kid who came to his dad was working for some mission down there, as a Peace Corps or something like that, or he was a teacher or some bullshit. But he was older than me, and he tried to join the Marine Corps and got shot down. He was returned, he didn't make it. And when I told him that I was joining, he said, man, you will never make it. But you know what? I was a scrawny little fucking kid, I weighed 115 pounds. And this kid told me, he's like, you will never make it. If I couldn't make it, you will never make it. And those words resonated with me because I made it a fucking point, that I was going to make it. And I didn't care what it was because I was committed to it. And I remember when we did swim call. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And they toss you in the pool and you have the backpack on or whatever. Dude, I was drowning. And they tell you, that you will get disqualified if you hit the bottom of the pool and all that stuff, And I was suffering. And you would think I'm a strong swimmer because I'm Hispanic, right? But I am a strong swimmer, but dude, I was suffering. And I remember myself going underwater numerous times and I just gasping for, taking that little gasp and then just going underwater again and just pushing as hard as I could. And when I got to the end of the pool, I remember one of my DIs was standing right on top of my lane, and when I came up, he's like, what the fuck does it take, Steinway? And I said, fuck, I fucked it up, and he's like, I was like, I don't know, I don't know, sir. And he's like, it takes heart. He says, it takes heart. And I saw you struggling. I saw you fucking, I thought you were going to fucking quit and you kept on fucking pushing. And that's what it takes. It takes heart. And I knew from then, that I was going to be okay. And I made it, and I earned a title. And, like they say, the few, the proud. And that's something that nobody will ever take away from me. At first, you don't understand it, but there are numerous things in your life that mark you and make you who you are and guide you in that path. I'm a firm believer of God, and I think God always lays out signs for us to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the thing is, it's up to us to follow those signs. And that was one of my signs, that Marine coming up to me and handing me that sweatshirt that changed my life.
Right. Hell yeah. What was the hardest lesson the military taught you?
I think the military taught me never to quit. And that is something that I take with me everywhere I go. You know, we all have our ups and downs. We all fuck up. We all have our trials. But the thing that I took from the military or the Marine Corps specifically is never to quit. And I tell you, I have a story about that where we're actually in formation. We're coming back from Chow or whatever. And actually, no, we were in Chow. And you know how right hand, right knee, left hand, left knee, you know, and you're just fucking devouring your food or whatever.
Yep.
I had put so much food in my mouth, you know, because I was starving. And at the end, you know, when the DIs get up and everybody has to get up, you know, instantaneously, you know, I had a mouthful of fucking cornbread, I think, you know, and I was like looking around and I didn't see anybody fucking looking. And I grabbed that juice, you know, and I'm like, oh, you know, took a little sip of my juice. I got back up, went into formation. And then when we got back to the barracks, I remember my drill instructor, Sergeant Kozel. I'll never fucking forget that guy. But he came up to me. He's like, "You thought you were slick, didn't you? I saw you taking that last sip out of your water, you know, whatever." I'm like, fuck. And he's like, "Recruit Steinway, report to the quarterdeck." And I'm like, oh, God damn it. And he took me out on this walk. And it was late chow, so it was already getting dark. And we go on this walk. This motherfucker was power walking, you know, I'm trying to catch up to him. And we go into this barracks. Barracks were destroyed. It was like the tornado had just hit it, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And bunks everywhere, pillows, mattresses. It was a fucking destroy. But we walk into this barracks. He walks in behind me and he locks the fucking doors. Bro, I thought he was gonna murder me. I was like, oh shit, this is the end of days for Sean Steinway, you know what I'm saying? But the intimidation factor of that, you know, because they know how to fucking play the game. And he started ITing me and he just fucking PT'd the shit out of me. And I remember him, you know, I was going from side straddle hops to push-ups to crunches to whatever. And at a point he had me doing push-ups. And every push-up I did, he was adding pillows to my back. Every push-up I did with a pillow on my back felt like I had 80 pounds on my fucking back, you know?
You sure it was a pillow?
There were pillows, you know, but I was so exhausted that it was, the mind fuck, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I got to the point where I couldn't do it anymore. And he got down to my face and I remember he was yelling and he said, "If you're gonna fucking quit now, motherfucker." And I was like, "I don't want to quit. I don't want to quit." And he said, "Well, if you want the pain to stop," he says, and this is going to be controversial, I guess, because back in the day it was a little bit different. I'm old as fuck, okay? I'm 48 years old, so I went in the military a while back. But
no, what were the years that you were in?
I was in from 97 to 2001.
Yeah, you are old as fuck.
And he put his boot right next to, and back in the day we had to spit shine our boots, you know, not like you guys that had all these fucking, you don't know what shoe polish is. But and I'll admit, I was a bitch, you know, and I kissed the boot. I did kiss the boot. And he fucking kicked me right in the fucking face. And he got down to my face and he says, "You never, ever let anybody degrade you the way I just did." He says, "You will never kiss anybody's fucking boot. You will fucking take it like a fucking man and you will carry on. You will never fucking let anybody put you down." And that's a lesson that I take with me, man. That really marked me, and I'm grateful for him. You know, they always say, you know, you will never forget your drill instructors. And he did teach me a lesson that day, you know, and that lesson was never to quit and never to let anybody, and I think I overdo it sometimes, you know, because, uh, I don't let anybody put me down, you know, and it's a thing. Like I said, we all have our ups, we all have our downs, and we learn from our downs. We learn from our mistakes, but we always carry on, and that's what the Marine Corps taught me.
What was your mindset leaving the military?
My mindset leaving the military was that I was unstoppable. I uh, I truly believe in that. I think the military paved my path. I think I wouldn't be the man that I am today without the Marine Corps. I really would not. And a lot of people, there's a lot of different branches. I respect all branches. We all talk shit to each other, and of course, we have to. Like my son is in the Navy, I talk shit to him every single day. You know,
Hell yeah.
100%.
And that's we wouldn't talk shit. Like, do you talk shit to the people you really don't like? You just avoid them. You stay away from them.
100%.
Right?
You stay
And so
away from
I
them.
was listening to somebody else this morning talk about like the most racist people you'll ever be around are military members and construction workers because all they ever talk about is race and make jokes about it, et cetera. But we really wouldn't do that if we feared or hated or whatever, right? That's literally how we bond
And
with
I
each other.
think because in the Marine Corps, we see no race, right? And in the military, we don't. We always, I always thought everybody's green,
Yeah.
so we joke around with each other no matter what your race is, People joked around about me, for being Hispanic, the Mexican, the wetback, whatever, I will never take offense to that. And especially with my friends, like you said, the people that we care for. Um, Now, like I said, a lot of people don't understand how the military actually bonds. And I'm going to speak about the Marine Corps because that's my branch. And the brotherhood that's out there, for the Marines is just unbelievable. I'm going to switch gears for a moment, but I'm going to talk about my time after the Marine Corps. Like you said, when I got out of the Marine Corps, I knew what path I wanted to take, and that's where CHIPS comes from, right? Because when I went in the Marine Corps and I was an 0311, I did what I wanted to do. I was able to finish what I wanted to do in the military, and I think I would have stayed in if it wasn't that I became a father at a young age, and I needed to find a purpose for my kids as well. And it was hard in the military. I had two kids already when I was in the military. My son was born right after boot camp, so it was tough because back in the day, the pay and still today, the pay is not that great. And back in the day, we didn't have all the benefits that the military has nowadays, and but I needed to find another path to help my family out. And my path was law enforcement. That was my other passion, it was the military and the law enforcement part. So I got out of Quantico. Quantico was my last duty station. I was at officer candidate school. That was my last assignment. And I paved my way to becoming a police officer in Fairfax County. And I was a stud, when I went to the academy. I was like fresh out of the Marine Corps. I was in the best shape of my life. And I remember going through the academy and met a couple of Marines that were there. My squad leader actually, who was a police officer, but he was like my go-to guy who was, each squad had a mentor who was a cop. And his name was MPO Ponsart was his name. And he was a Marine. And as soon as he knew that I was in the Marine Corps, that I had just gotten out of the Marine Corps, he was like, "Hey, brother." It wasn't like, "Hey, you recruit" or whatever. It was, "Hey, brother, you're going to get through this." And the police academy actually wasn't really hard because I was in good shape. But coming out of the academy and going up to my first assignment as a police officer, I was assigned to the West Springfield District Station in Fairfax County. And I remember my first day in roll call. There was another kid that was assigned with me who graduated the academy with me, but he was a college grad. And we had to introduce ourselves. And luckily, his turn was before me. And he said, "I am such and such. I just graduated, George Mason University. And I wanted to be able," and everybody's like, "Shut the fuck up, man. Nobody gives a shit about your college story, blah, blah, blah."
Yeah, it's a cool story, but you don't have to tell stories. Just do cool shit, right?
Yeah,
Especially in the executive protection world. You've done a little bit of EP work for me.
I have.
It's the the guys who show up and feel like they have to communicate in some way that they deserve to be there. They start off with, oh, I was 7 years special
I know.
forces and
Yeah.
I served under president whatever and I met this celebrity. It's like, cool, we're working here. You already got the job. You can stop interviewing. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
let's just do cool shit.
So you're trying to tell me to shut the fuck up?
No. I'm saying in that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
You always have to give your bio, right?
Yeah. You always have to qualify yourself.
Yeah.
Just do good work.
Yeah.
Right. You got the job.
Yeah, but it was funny because I was thinking to myself, I was sitting there, I was like, man, this is a fucking tough crowd, and I was trying to think of what to say. And when he finished, everybody was talking. It was like, you're at a fucking football game. Everybody's just minding their own fucking business. They're not even paying attention to what he's saying, and when it was my turn, I remember standing up and in good old Marine Corps fashion, I went, hey, and everybody like, what the fuck, and I said, my name is Sean Steinway. I just left the United States Marine Corps and and everybody like, oh, whoa. And this one dude in the back of the roll call room, says, hey, this is my Marine Corps brother. You come here, you sit next to me. And I was like, you heard the man. I'm sitting next to him. And I went over there and I sat next to him. And like, if anybody has a problem or an issue with this devil dog, you come talk to me. And I was like, you got that right, motherfuckers, But that was one of my first feelings, of the brotherhood outside of the Marine Corps, because that was my first job.
So it didn't at all feel like he was like, hey, Boot, come hold my pocket?
No,
Okay.
not at all.
Good.
It was all about, hey, this is my Marine Corps brother, and I'm going to take care of him,
Right.
And that really impacted me, because I then understood what the brotherhood was about, and of course we have the brotherhood in the Marine Corps, when you're in, we're all brothers, even though, sometimes we don't like each other, but when it comes time to do our job, we're always there to have, each other's back. But that was humbling, and that helped me out a lot because I knew that no matter where I went, there was always going to be, another jarhead taking care of me,
Right.
Which is great, or vice versa, me taking care of another jarhead, right?
Yeah.
So it is great.
So it occurs to me, we have prepared questions before this, and we try to draw out the best questions we can in order to tell your story. I knew that you'd served for 4 years, but you didn't tell me what for 4 years. And so, what was your EAS?
My EAS was January of 2001.
Yeah, I picked up on that, right? And so, question I didn't have prepared was, how did 9/11 hit you when you're probably going through the academy at that point?
So, great. So I took an early release because my EAS was supposed to be in March. And I had accrued leave and stuff like that. And the Marine Corps allowed me to get out early so I could start the academy in January. So I had graduated the academy already. And barely, right? Because I went through academy from January to June. It was a 6 months academy. Am I doing the math right? Yes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Math for Marines. Till June. And then I was already in independent patrol. So I had graduated from the academy. I had already finished my field training period. And 9/11 was really hard, right? Because I remember going into the courthouse. I was at court that day. And at the courthouse, we had our little cubicles, or that was a little room where everybody went to chill. And you went into the courtrooms as you had to, for your cases. And I was getting my paperwork ready or whatever to go into the courtroom. And I caught somebody saying, man, a plane just flew into the World Trade Center, and I was like, oh, like a Cessna or something, like a rookie pilot or whatever, And I stepped out and I went into the courtroom and we're all sitting inside the courtroom when one of the court deputies came in and said, hey, we're canceling court for today. We are under attack and we need everybody to calmly, step out of the courtroom. And I came out and went into the break room, and everybody was in awe of what was going on. And we all got recalled back. And our job was, to support the Pentagon and everything that was happening at the Pentagon, and increase our patrol areas. And everybody was out. There was everybody that was off, everybody that was at courts, everybody that was on patrol at the time. We were dedicated to help at the Pentagon and increase our patrol areas as it was. And it was a very humbling, you never expect that in your country, especially in the United States,
How long
And
did that last? The increased patrols and that kind of thing.
oh, bro, you know what? So here's my issue, right? The issue was that the increased patrols lasted probably for a month or so. That we were all out there doing our thing. But the thing that impacted me the most was that it took such a tragedy, you know. But dude, when you went out on patrol after 9/11, you felt so appreciated, and you felt so, not that I had never felt American, because that is, I embraced that.
Sure.
But you saw that in the people. Everybody had an American flag out in their yard. Everybody had an American flag hanging from their garage door. Everybody was patriotic. Everybody was united. Everybody was. You would go into 7-Eleven, instead of people offering you a donut, like they're like, hey, here's a donut, cop, shut the fuck up. It was, thank you for your service. Thank you for what you're doing to protect our communities, and that was, even though it was a tragedy, it was a great time to being a law enforcement officer, or a public servant, because you really felt the appreciation, you felt how people became united. And the sad part about it is that we all forgot, I haven't, but most people have forgotten about it.
I run private security. You're in law enforcement. Two completely different worlds in terms of gravity and
No, but
expectations.
I got the resume.
But we do have one thing in common, and that's that if you do everything right as a law enforcement officer or a security officer, nothing changes.
Mhm.
Right? You prevented something from happening,
Mhm.
but there's no, if you build a house, there's a house to look at when you're done.
Mhm.
If you create a movie, you get to watch the movie, you get awarded for the movie and all that. If you do a great job as a security officer or a police officer, nothing changes. But if something goes wrong, that's national news,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So it's very high stakes, very low reward most of the time.
Yes. And I think, I'm not saying, and I don't think any of us that do our profession, we do it for the, hey, attaboy, good job.
Right.
I think we do it because we're committed, to something that's greater than us.
Yeah.
Um,
Speaking of something greater than us, what do you miss most about being out of uniform, specifically the Marine Corps uniform?
The camaraderie, and that's not to say that you don't find camaraderie outside, because there's always camaraderie, but the fucking around, it was great, because Marines with downtime, bro, we get creative. You know what I'm saying? And
It's dangerous. It's so dangerous.
It's dangerous. And I remember that we would come up with some stupid games, that just to pass the time, but it built who we were. Like you said, dangerous, right? Because it always involves either fighting or throwing shit, or just things that are going to get you hurt. But we didn't see it that way. It was that thing where it was creative and entertaining for all. I remember being in the field, and we were doing an exercise out in the field, and we had some downtime, and we started playing with. We had blanks, right? And we're like, hey, wonder what happens if we fucking put one of our cleaning rods, and shoot a fucking blank. Bro, those things are fucking devastating,
Yeah, they are.
So we're putting cleaning rods down our fucking M16s and shooting our blanks and doing, competition about marksmanship with cleaning rods, out in the field. Stupid,
No greater form of marksmanship.
No greater form of marksmanship. But who comes up with all this shit? Who thinks it's a great idea? I know. It's just funny,
What is the quote? Empty hands or idle hands are the devil's playground. It absolutely applies to every group of Marines everywhere.
Yeah, definitely.
So there was very little time between the Marine Corps and Fairfax PD. What made you? Was that something you planned for?
I did, and like I told you before, it was more of I wanted to be stable for my family, right? When I went in, I was single, no kids. When I came out, I was married, 2 kids, and my purpose in life changed a little bit, right? Because I wanted to be there for my family, and I understood that being in the Marine Corps, even though the best part of my life, right? I didn't want to be deployed and my kids having to, grow up without having their father there, So the next best thing, that I found was I wanted to be a cop, and that was another one of my childhood dreams. So I had already achieved what I wanted. That was earning the title, and that was the greatest achievement of my life. And then following through with being a police officer, that was another childhood dream.
Why Fairfax specifically? Did you try for more than one and end in that?
I did try for more than one, and actually, my first choice was DC. It's a big difference, buddy.
Yeah.
But although now I don't know how much different they are because Fairfax has changed a lot as well. But I remember going to take my PT test and my written test to the DC police first. And you know what? It was all I knew. I've never been part of that life, So what I saw, it was to me was like, oh, cool, But I had applied for different departments. I applied for DC, I applied for Fairfax City, and I applied for Fairfax County. And I was learning. I didn't have a guide. I didn't have anybody, holding my hand saying, oh, I was learning. So when I went to DC and I took that test, to me it was great. But then my next test was at Fairfax County, and when I saw Fairfax installations and Fairfax everything, I was like, oh yeah, this is night and day, This is totally different, which, I mean, not to talk bad about DC, but Fairfax had a lot of resources. So I took my test for Fairfax County and Fairfax City, and Fairfax County called me first, and DC called me as well, but I went with Fairfax County, which I was grateful. Fairfax County did really good for me. I was able to do a lot of different cool things in Fairfax, and I was able to make a lot of good friends in Fairfax, Speaking about the Marine Corps, backtracking a little bit because I missed this part because we're in different squads at the moment, but my first day at Fairfax County Academy, they have the informational day, where you have to wear a suit and tie, and then people come in and they got donuts and bagels and hey, welcome, this is part of your culture now, and you're like, oh shit, donuts.
We don't do that with crayons in the Marine Corps.
I know, right?
At least we didn't during my time.
Maybe we should use it as a recruiting tool, But when I was there, I remember, grabbing some coffee, and this guy says, Steinway? And I kind of fucking turn around, and I said, oh shit, Brian? And it was one of my fucking devil dogs, that we were in the Marine Corps together when we were in security forces. And, we were good friends when we were in security forces. And just having him there, and him having me there made it easier for us as well, right? Because we were both jarheads. We knew each other. And it got to the point where after the academy, because we went through the academy, they actually nicknamed us Thunder and Lightning. It's fucking gay as fuck, right? Because it wasn't like Ace and Gary, thankfully, but it was thunder and lightning because we did everything together. And they sent us to the same assignment, so the same station. But during our field training, we were separated. I went to days, he went to midnights. And then after our field training, then I went to evenings and he went to days. And then when we finished our training, we were both put in the same squad. And that was chaotic because this motherfucker and we were inseparable, and the thunder and lightning stuck.
Man, I wish I could have experienced this.
Bro, I'm telling you, I remember a couple stories, and I know we're pressed for time or whatever, but a couple stories. One of them, we go to the school alarm, and we are individual patrol cars, but we were neighboring zones, so we were zone buddies, because we would always back each other up. And the lieutenant had made it that way because he knew we worked good together.
Mm-hmm.
And we went on to this school alarm, which alarms are a dime a dozen when you're in police work. Alarms go off all the time. But we had made, this pact with Brian that we would never become lackadaisical in anything that we did. We were always treated as it was our first call. So we go into this school, man, and we're kicking doors and fucking pine corners and, doing combat rolls and shit. And at the end, we kick this door that leads to the outside. We both come out, like pie in the corner. And I remember our sergeant just sitting on top of it, the hood of his cruiser. He's just looking at us. He's like, "You guys are fucking idiots." And we're just like, "Yeah, I guess so, but we're fucking having fun at work, We did what we were supposed to do, We took our calls seriously. But that was one of the stories, and another one of cool stories with Brian and I, we always did that. And we got in chases together. We got in foot chases together. And it was actually a really good fucking time. But I remember it was snowing. And they always say, when it starts snowing, they say Operation Parking is in effect, right? Because they don't want you out there, looking for shit. They want you to park so you don't wreck your cruiser, or something stupid like that. But for that day, we were in roll call, and the lieutenant's like, "Okay, today, just to minimize, the risk, we're gonna double you guys up in a police car." And he starts going on assignments, and he's like, "I still don't believe I'm fucking doing this, but Steinway and Gatos, you're together." And we're like, yeah. And as roll call ends, the lieutenant pulls us aside. He's like, "Listen, motherfuckers, I want you to leave here and you go fucking park. Don't be doing any stupid shit. Just fucking park. That's your whole purpose. You respond to calls, but you park." "Roger that, sir. Don't worry about it." We get in our cruiser. We're all excited. Dude, about 3 minutes into it, we're like 701 Baker on a traffic stop, and our lieutenant's like, "What the fuck? Like, I told you guys not to be." And I'm like, "Hey, listen, the lady was all fucked up, man. We had to handle this, But it was funny. I had a good time, and I can't forget that. I can't believe that I was forgetting about that. But yeah, Brian was a big part of that, and the camaraderie about the military. That was great.
So you went from the Marine Corps to Fairfax Police. How long were you at Fairfax Police?
I was at Fairfax County for about 3.5 years.
And what sparked the transition from Fairfax to the DEA?
This was a blessing, right? And remember, I'm a firm believer in signs. And what happened while I was in Fairfax, my ex-wife and I got separated. And she ended up taking my kids back to Guatemala. My ex-wife is from Guatemala. And she ended up taking my kids back to Guatemala, and I was left over here by myself. And it was really hard for me to cope without having my kids. And that transition was really, it was hurting me. But I was flying back to Guatemala as much as I could to go see my kids. And in one of my trips down there, my ex-wife and I talked about, life and everything that had gone on. And we decided to give it another try, for our kids. It's actually a cool story. Her parents used to work for the government in Guatemala. And when I went back and we decided to give it a shot, together, her parents, there was a new program that was starting in the government in Guatemala, which was going to be creating a highway patrol division for the Guatemalan police. So my ex-wife's mother got me an interview with one of the ministers of government down there, and they interviewed me for the position in order to help create this highway patrol. And I went back to Guatemala to be the founder of the highway patrol in Guatemala. And as I navigated that, it was because of my police background and my Marine Corps background, with leadership that qualified me for it. And I was actually in charge to put the first class together. And when we did our first class of cadets, this was a brand new program, so we had to design everything. We had no uniforms, we had no nothing, right? And so I had to come up with the PT uniforms, and I actually designed the uniforms for the Highway Patrol in Guatemala now.
Is that why they wear the assless chaps?
Yes,
Oh,
assless chaps and the clips on the nipples. That's part of the.
That's all
thing.
you.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
Yeah, no. Actually, this is a cool story, right? Because you can't take the Marine Corps out of me. So the uniform, if you look it up on online, the name of the highway patrol is called Provial. And the uniform that I came up with is they wear green pants, khaki shirts, and smoky hats.
That's hot.
Oh, yeah, fucking odd, isn't it? So they were Marine Corps drill instructor uniforms.
Motard.
Bro, it was fucking beautiful. And you know what? It looks great. But that's a part of the Marine Corps that I brought to another country. So that's fucking beautiful. Yes. You know what I'm saying?
Respect.
Thank you. Yeah, so that is their uniform. They wear green pants, khaki shirts, and Smokey Bear hats.
Love it.
So as I was doing that, I responded to the Minister of Government down there, and the Minister of Communications was his title. And I started ordering gear for my guys, and I wanted them to have the best gear possible. So I started getting, quotes for duty belts and gun holsters and all this shenanigans. And when the first order came out, and it was time for me to equip my guys, I went to open up the boxes. And everything that I had ordered was not it. They had changed my order, and they had ordered all the cheap shit. And I said, this is not what I ordered. And they said, well, don't worry about it because...
you're right back in the Marine Corps.
Now, it was different, right? It was... they said, no, don't worry about it because you will be getting your cut out of the difference. And I said, what do you mean? And I said, well, we ordered something different because it was cheaper, but you know what I'm getting at. I'm not going to say it, but you know what I'm getting at. My viewers will know what I'm getting at. So they were offering me a cut. And I said, listen, that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to equip my guys with the best thing that I can get them. I'm not going to put my guys at risk just because you guys want to pocket the rest of the fucking money. And I told the minister that day, I said, you know what? I'm done. I said, I don't want to be a part of this. I said, this is not who I am. And I am not going to continue with this. And I left. And it was a hard time in my life because I ended up being jobless for about 6 months. And that's where you come to the part where you've asked numerous times, that purpose. Well, what do you do with your life after that, right? Because I was without a job and I didn't know what to do. And I had my background, in firearms, and I decided that, growing up in Guatemala, I actually knew a lot of people down there. And what I started doing was I started reaching out to all my friends. You would do great in Guatemala, actually. And I'll tell you why.
Are you suggesting that I would benefit from being in a corrupt government?
No, not at all. But what I am suggesting is this, because I have a lot of friends. My mom did a great job raising me, and we were not. I come from a middle class family. We didn't have a lot of luxuries, but my mom worked really hard on a single income. My mom was a secretary, and she worked really hard to give me a good education. So she sent me to a really good school. And most of the kids in my school were rich, and I didn't have that. But when I was jobless, I was thinking to myself, I said, well, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And I thought about it. I said, you know what? I'll train people. And YouTube was not a thing back in the day, so I couldn't learn shit like that. But I had enough background that I felt comfortable teaching people, firearms and stuff like that. So I started teaching security for bodyguards down in Guatemala for all the rich families.
Nice.
And I actually did really good. I did really well for myself doing that. And I had a couple of good families down there that were my clients. And I provided all the training for their bodyguards. And it's a big thing in Guatemala. Almost everybody has a bodyguard. So that's why I'm saying you probably do really well down there. But I did that for about 6 months. And I was at the range one day. And I had just finished a class. I had my clients there. I was actually doing like the Marine Corps does, right? The dog and pony shows, because I was showing my client what their bodyguards had learned. And I got back in my car and I had a cell phone. Cell phones were a thing. They had just, back in the day. At that point in my life, they were a thing already. And I had a voicemail, and the voicemail said, hey, Sean, this is such and such. I am the country attaché for DEA here in Guatemala, and we would like to talk to you. And I was like, what the fuck did I do? Right? Because I'm like, why does DEA want to talk to me? But once I got back in my car, I gave him a call back, and I say, hey, sir, this is Sean Steinway. I received a voicemail. You said you wanted to talk to me. He's like, hey, man, is there any way you come to the embassy? And I said, sure. I said, listen, I'm at the range. I'm dirty. But if you really need to talk to me right now, I said, I'll drive down to the embassy. I have no problem doing that. So he said, okay, well, come on down. And I went down there, and I went to post 1, saw the devil dog out there. And this tall dude comes out, he was an agent, and he recently retired. Great guy, West Tabor. He comes out and he's like, welcome to the team, brother. And I was like, the what? What are you talking about? He's like, man, I think you're going to do great things here, blah, blah, blah. We want to talk to you. The boss man is upstairs. And I'm like,
so nobody even really offered you a job. They was like, you work for us now.
It was put that way in a way, where I was like, I don't know what you guys are talking about, right?
I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. No, seriously.
So
you don't refuse.
I went up. I went up to the office, and I met with the country attaché, and he says, listen, man, we've heard a lot of great things about you. We know what your background is, and we need somebody down here that's going to be, representing DEA. And we want you to be the head for this unit, and I think you're going to do great things. And he explained to me what it was about and said, hey, you up for the task? And I say, you know what? Give me a day to think about it at least. I mean, I know I've already got balloons and shit going on over here, but give me a day to think about it. And needless to say, I took the job. And I spent 7 years of my life working in Central America for the DEA. And after that, I continued my career with DEA. I did my career with the DEA for 20 years. But that was the door opener for me, It was down there. And it was great times. Really, really good times. I left Guatemala in 2010. And I came. So I did a lot of work overseas, and there was other DEA units that would come down and did work with me and my unit. All our police officers, I was in charge of what was called the Sensitive Investigative Unit. DEA has these units all over the world There's 14 countries that they have it on, maybe 15 now. But yeah, I was in charge of the unit in Guatemala, and we did a lot of good work. We really did a lot of good work. But aside from the academy here in Quantico, Virginia, where we had to bring, and this program, what it does, it trains local police officers in the host nation, in the host country. And these cops will be dedicated to serving DEA mission.
So you were 7 years DEA.
6 years with DEA overseas. And then I came back and I became part of the FAST teams here in Quantico, Virginia for the DEA. I was assigned as the armor for the FAST teams when I came back. That was the position that I was assigned to. And I was blessed because I was able to attend a lot of different armor schools, and it was great. I really was blessed. And then after that, one day, my friend who was a section chief, he asked me, he's like, "Hey, man, I know you are, eager to deploy again, and do what you like doing." And he said, "I have a position going up to, we have a deployment, coming up, and I want you on it." And I said, "I'll do whatever you need me to do," right? So I started deploying with the FAST teams, and I was one of the firearms instructors and tactics instructors for them. And we traveled all over Central and South America. The FAST teams did a lot of, they had a lot of presence in Afghanistan and Central and South America and in Asia. But I was never in the deployments to Afghanistan or the Middle East. My area of responsibility was always Central and South America. So that's what I did. And, it was great times, great dudes. And that actually brought back a lot of the camaraderie, right? Because you're back with all those type A personalities, that are, door kickers and,
people.
Our people. You know what I'm saying? And it was great, because it was, the mission was great. And everything came back around. It was actually a blessing. So all of my career, man, has been being in the right place at the right time and blessings from God. He has made that for me and has paved my path. And it always, in the FAST teams as well, you had a lot of guys, that maybe didn't have that military experience, but they had that law enforcement, and FAST teams were tier 1 groups. They were very well trained. And you saw, we had a lot of Marines too, there's always the jarheads that are in there, so.
Thank God for jarheads.
Yeah, thank God for jarheads, but it was a humbling experience, to be a part of all those great men. And the FAST teams was one of the highlights of my career as well. It was great. And like I said, being able to share, with great people, great like-minded people, it was humbling because you learn a lot from that, right? And then the FAST teams went away, and it was a hard time for everybody, because that was such a great program that it was, and talking about finding purpose, right? Because then you got to look for different things, from the Marine Corps to becoming a police officer, to go on DEA, and then go into this great unit, and for me, actually, I was transferred right after the FAST teams. I got a spot at headquarters, and everything. It's a circle, right? Because the unit that I was leading overseas, the sensitive investigative units, I was moved to a headquarters position where I was overseeing, I was part of the team that overlooked all the SIUs around the world. So I had the experience about running an SIU and leading, one of those teams, and then come up to our DEA headquarters. And now I had the experience, I'm learning of what is behind the scenes, on how you allocate all the funds and all the, necessities to be able to sustain these units.
Sure.
So I was able to travel again all over the world, and I was able to see every SIU in the world, and one of my responsibilities as one of the team members for that unit was that, I overlooked about all the security issues that they had overseas and equipment issues, the weapons, the vehicles, and all that stuff that they had that DEA provided for us. So I got to see that part of it as well. And here's the full circle because headquarters was a suit and tie type of job at DEA headquarters, right? Every day. And that's not me, right? So I did it for a while. I did it for about a year and a half, and I did the commute up to headquarters. And then a good friend of mine was became in charge of actually the unit that provides the training at the DA Academy for these units. So that's the full circle, right? Coming from being an operator overseas running this unit to learning how to manage one, and what goes behind the scenes, to then coming around and being the one that trains these guys, right? And he was looking for a firearms and tactical instructor that spoke Spanish.
I know a guy.
This guy, right? I know a guy. So no, they were pushing really hard for me, and they said, "Man, it would be great, if you came down here." And I talked to my boss up in headquarters. I said, "Listen, what if you let me go there, TDY, and I could still represent our office, from headquarters, but I will be involved with the training as well. So we could be, I could be that guy, right, that is doing, both things, and I could tell you guys, the training and everything that we're doing to make these cops better investigators." And the boss bit, on the hook, and he's like, "Yeah, that'll be a great idea." And I said, "Yeah." So I came down here, TDY, until they actually created a permanent position for me down here in Quantico. And I became part of the international training unit that was directly in charge of training all the SIUs around the world. So we did a lot of training. We had, it was nonstop. Our academies were 5-week academies. We upped it to 6-week academy classes, and we taught our cops we really expanded the program. When I went through that program, in my younger years in 2004, it was not nearly as complete as when not just me, right? Because I didn't create this, but the team that we had there was so good, and when we jived together so good that we really created a really good program for our counterparts. And we teach everything from firearms tactics, driving, investigations, report writing, you name it. We did the whole package, and it was a really, really complete program. We had a fast teams reunion after fast teams got dissolved, and it was like it was a retreat. And I got to see my brothers that were part of the program, and I saw how hard it was for a lot of them, because we talked about it. When they first talked about the fast retreat, I thought it was going to be, hey, we're all together, we're going to have a great time, and we're going to be, and we did, because we did. But it was mostly about, how people were coping from, coming from this tier 1 unit, and going back out to doing, agent work, in here in the United States and stuff like that. And I really didn't understand it because I had found that purpose. My purpose was I kept on sharing my knowledge. But I did see that, with a lot of my friends, that finding the purpose was one of the hardest things. And I know that hits hard. But now, I just saw them a couple weeks ago, and everybody's doing good because everybody has found that purpose again, and that's the thing, never to quit, and always to look forward to your next step. And sometimes it's hard, because it is hard, and it happened to me at the end, and I'm going to get to that, because after serving 20 years with the DEA, I felt like my job security was great, and it only took for one disagreement with a higher up and my contract was terminated. I gave everything of my life for DEA. And this is one of the parts that it was, I think the finding purpose part, this is where it hit me the most. Because throughout my career, I had always planned this, So when you have a plan, you're not struggling. Because, like you say, you can't let go of a branch unless you're holding on to another one. And my path has always been or was like that. I always knew what my next step was. But when you find yourself without that plan, that's when it really hits you hard. And DEA did great to me, and I am grateful for everything that DEA did for me. But it took one person, to get rid of that dream, and it was a show of I am in charge. And Rich, that was really one of the hardest moments of my life. My whole unit was for me. My unit chief was like, "Listen, man, I really don't know what happened." He's like, he was so out of it, and my whole team, we were a super tight unit, super tight unit. The thing about it is that this person didn't know what my background was, and I think that DEA, if they would have really find out about this, I think they would have came out to my rescue, because the last time I saw, my friends from the fast teams, they really didn't understand. They thought that I had just left on my own, or and when I told them, people were like, "Man, we didn't know that's what happened," right? But driving home, and I'm in tears, and I had to fucking gather my composure, and how am I going to tell this to my wife? I'm the breadwinner. I was a single. We were a single income family, and my wife, of course, she has her food truck and she works, but I was the breadwinner. And I remember coming home, and my wife was outside, and as soon as I saw her, I just started crying, And she said, "What happened?" I said, "I just lost my job," and I couldn't tell her why, and it was really hard. And that's I think that's one of the moments in my life where I really hit bottom, and that was where finding a purpose, right, becomes a mission. Because how can you be the man of your house if you can't provide for your family? And granted, these guys, and like I said, this particular person, man, if I could tell my whole story about DEA, I spent 8 years without seeing my kids for things that I did for DEA, and those years, nobody's going to give them back to me for my kids. And it was 8 years of my life that my kids hated me and they didn't want to talk to me. And it wasn't me, it was because of my job. And I wasn't able to see my kids for that period of time. And for this motherfucker just to fucking cut me like that without, I felt like my years of service with DEA were honorable. I don't have any bad records, and you can dig into it.
Yeah.
I had letters of appreciation, letters of commendation, attaboys, great job. I went through a gazillion schools that DEA paid for. Rank doesn't make a leader, and that, your position does not make you a great leader. I think it's the way that you take care of your people, and the way that you lead by example is what makes you a great leader.
You're currently running for a political office, and I think as well as anybody does that you can get asked all kinds of questions about, well, how would you deal with what's currently going on, or how would you deal with this thing that
100%.
happened 10 years ago, or is happening 6 months ago. But you look at, George W. Bush was elected long before 9/11. No one could have thought to ask, how are you going to handle this situation?
Of course.
And so I think a lot of it just comes down to values, right?
It does come to values, and the moment that you're put in the spot, right? And I think, you need to prepare yourself, and it was a tragedy for me and for my family, that I almost lost my house. I almost lost my family, because I went into fucking lockdown mode. I was depressed, and the one thing that always, at least for me, and I hope all of you guys see it this way. Prayer is key. And I think prayer is what got me through it, because every day, man, I would ask God, to send me that next signal. What I knew there was a purpose why it had happened, and I just didn't know why, and what was my next step. And I hit rock bottom. I really did hit rock bottom. I was, feeling useless, especially, towards my family, because I wasn't able to provide. And my wife kept on telling, my wife kept on pushing me. She's like, well, why don't you have to go after it. And you know what? I did. I reached out to DEA, Internal Affairs, and I decided to take it a step higher, because I knew there was not going to be, and not that DEA would not do their job, but I knew I needed to take it up a step higher. And I went through OIG, and I made a formal complaint against this particular person. And, OIG did interviews. They interviewed me. They interviewed everybody in my team. And everybody in my team was on my side. Once the interviews got to the point where it was getting to him, what do you think he did? He retreated, right? So he retired. He had the time already to retire. And instead of facing the consequences, or instead of facing the allegations, he chose not to answer questions and retired.
Wow.
Which shows you the type of person who he is. And the investigation stopped. There was nothing else to do. I was hoping, I was going to get my job back. I was hoping, I was going to be able to fight my case. Lawyers didn't want to take my case because it was an at-will state. So I was jobless, in a hole, feeling sorry for myself, but I needed to find my purpose. And my wife started telling me, hey, you have all these creds, you have all these certs, you have all this knowledge. You could go, look for another contract. I didn't want to. I really didn't want it. I was so hurt about what had happened that I really did not want to look for another contract. And I didn't put myself out there, but what I started doing was praying. And I wanted to know, I knew God had my back, and my wife and our food truck, she said, you know what? You find yourself again, and we will be okay. And my wife became a full-time operator in the food truck, and the food truck has kept us alive, and I'm blessed. I am blessed, that for having my wife next to me and showing me, that she's a fighter as well, and she has kept our family alive. But in the meantime, I started thinking, I said, you know what? I want to get back to the community again. I'm not done. I want to serve, and that's been my life. And I remember as being in the FAST teams, actually, in 2014, I applied for Stafford County Sheriff's Office because I wanted to be an auxiliary deputy. And it was one of my things that I wanted to reach, because we use Stafford County's range all the time with the FAST teams. And I would always see their deputies, their deputies always fucking squared away, Then they had the hats, the uniforms are always pressed. Everything looks, like models, I was like, man, these deputies are fucking squared away, and they are. And I said, you know what? I'm going to try it. Well, I got accepted to be an auxiliary back in 2014. And it was a year-long academy that you had to commit to every Wednesday and every Saturday to do this academy. Well, I got deployed with the FAST teams, and I was going to miss part of the academy. And I say, listen, I'll come back, and they wouldn't let me do it. Anyways, that failed miserably. But I remembered that when I was down on the ground, this a couple of years ago. And I said, you know what? I have the time to do this now. And what better than to be a deputy? And I said, that's what I'm going to do. And I've known Sheriff Decatur, for quite a few years just because of our interactions and because, you know, friends that we have in common and stuff like that. And I remember texting him and saying, sir, this is Sean Steinway. I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm really interested in joining, the Stafford County uh, deputy deputies. And he's like, Sean, put in your application, brother. This is great. And I say, I have the time to do it right now. I could go to the academy. I could do all these things. And I started finding my purpose again, because I got really excited about it. And, I put in my application and I went through my interviews. I did my polygraph. I did everything and I got hired. And I am happy and I am blessed and I am honored to be a Stafford County deputy now. And that is where I found my purpose again. I am the oldest in my squad. Well, there's one more guy that's older than me in my squad. I'm not going to mention names, but his name is Myers. But you know what? Working with all these kids, we have great leadership in our department. But when you're out on patrol, most of the kids that are out with me are half my age. They're and I call them kids, because they are kids, and they are, I actually I look up to them as well. But I think part of my path and part of my purpose now is I'm still learning because I haven't worked patrol in a long time, but I've done it before and I'm learning, relearning. Every day, no matter what you do, you always learn something. But I do have that life experience that I think I could pass on to the younger generations, and younger generation of deputies. That I hope that they see it that way. And I hope that when they see this podcast, that they are proud of that because I really, that is my purpose, and my wife sees it nowadays. My wife said, I'll give you 1 year, and, to do your deputy thing. And I say, yeah, I don't think it's going to be just a year. I think I'm in for the long run. But I think that is my purpose. I want to keep those kids safe, and I want to make sure that they are, doing the right thing. And I'm not in any leadership position in our agency, and I don't claim to be in a leadership position. Just want to throw that out there. But I do see myself as somebody that I want to take care of them, and that is my thing. We go out on calls, and I see myself as a protector not only for the people that we serve, but also to the younger generation.
Well, I think it's for anybody who really gives a shit. I think it goes without saying that you don't have to be in a leadership position to lead, right? And I think it's remarkable that you started the Marine Corps, Fairfax County, DEA, now Stafford County. You've made an entire, not just career, but a life out of protecting people, and in some ways, here or there, finding ways to lead people, and it's very admirable.
Thank you. Thank you. And it hasn't been easy, but for all of you that are searching or finding a purpose, that there will always, you got to keep your head high and you got to keep on fucking pushing because there will be. We all have a purpose and we all have our thing. I think God will put us where He needs us. And it's tough sometimes. I know because I've been there. And I can't tell you, that it's easy because it is not easy. And sometimes I still go at it, and think about it, the things that we've been through. But it is my faith in God and my decision to keep on moving forward, that gets me where I need to be. I am blessed because, and that is why I wanted to be a Stafford County deputy, right? It's our background, our values, our commitment to the public. It is so great. It's we have a reputation, and it is a great reputation. And like I said, that's what made me want to be a deputy sheriff in Stafford County, because everywhere you go and anywhere, what your job is, but especially in law enforcement, you're always going to have people that like you. You're always going to have people that don't like you, right? That's just going to happen. But in general, the perception in Stafford County as a whole of our department is great. We really have a good reputation because we are a good agency. We represent our community in a good way, and we are hard on our criminals, and we are fair to our people. And it's funny because you really won't understand it until you get that. I've arrested people before, and they'll be like, "Damn it, I knew I should have come through Stafford County." And I'm like, "You're damn right. Damn right you should have come through Stafford County, and try to commit crimes," because we are that department. And I am proud and honored to be a part of it, and that they gave me the opportunity to fulfill another part of my life streams, right? Because that was one of the things that was on my checklist, like I said, in 2014. And now I was able to complete it, and there's still a couple more that I need to complete, within the department.
Sure.
So
you're currently running for delegate. If you win the election, do you have to give up your position as a deputy? And how's that going to play into this life you've built for yourself as a protector?
So thank you for bringing that up. Now, yeah, I am running for delegate in the 65th district here in Virginia. And you know what? This is another part of my life, that it came to me at the same time, that I've been looking for a purpose. And like I said, for me, my purpose has always been to serve. That is my purpose. I like serving, I like protecting. And when I was, talking about becoming a delegate, it opened up my mind as to I can reach out and help more people in that way, right? And that is my purpose, to be a delegate. But how does it affect me in the sheriff's office? The sheriff's office has been very receptive to me, and they have given me my space, to do my campaign. But I told them, I'm never going to put my agency or my squad in any jeopardy. When I feel like this is going to be too much for me, I will have to make a decision. And my hopes and what I pray for is that I never have to make that decision. I hope that I am able to maintain, my job as a deputy sheriff, and at the same time serve and help the community, here in Virginia. I don't know how it's going to play out, right? That's a one up in the air, but I've thought about it. Maybe if I can't, like I said, the main purpose for me is not to hurt my department or my squad. So if at any point it gets to the point where I can't, because I have to commit too much to the delegate, which I want to, but I also want to continue to do my job, I will probably, ask if I can remain as an auxiliary deputy, and help the sheriff's office with my, volunteering my time and doing what I can to keep on doing my thing with them. But
So for those who don't know, and I think the auxiliary deputy program is somewhat unique to Stafford. I'm sure other people do it, but it's pretty big in Stafford County. What is an auxiliary law enforcement officer?
it's a regular deputy. We all go through the same academy. We all have to go through the same training. But auxiliaries are people that volunteer time. You don't get paid as an auxiliary. You're volunteering your time. And as auxiliaries, you also have to, maintain your proficiency. So you are held to the same standards as every other deputy. You have to qualify with your firearm. You have to do all your search. You have to qualify with your taser. You got to do all that stuff. So nothing changes except the part that you are doing it out of your good heart, out of your commitment to serve, right? Because We don't have that many auxiliaries in Stafford anymore. Back in the day, it used to be very big. And um, I think most of our auxiliaries right now are retired deputies that are, doing other things with their lives and stuff like that, but they maintain the auxiliary and they're always there to help, augment or whatever it takes. We're all at the service of the sheriff, right? So whatever our sheriff decides, that's how we serve.
Right on.
Yeah, but it's great. And for all of you watching and you need a purpose, being a deputy sheriff is an awesome thing. And I'm not trying to do a recruitment video over here, but I am. Now, that's one of the things that I love about being a deputy is that, how you get into the monotony of each day, being a deputy, you don't have that because every time you go to work, you get into so many different things, that you learn every day because you might find yourself on a call that you never in your life have had to dealt with, but the job is rewarding. It's a great agency to work for. It really is.
I've never heard, I don't think I've met a whole lot of Stafford County deputies. I don't think I've ever heard anyone who has anything bad to say about the sheriff or other deputies or anything like that.
And that's one of the biggest things, like we were talking about leadership before, when you have good leadership, I think everything flows. And we are blessed, that we do have good leadership. Sheriff Decatur is awesome. And, the people that are under him, he knows how to pick him,
Yeah.
So we do have good leadership.
Marine Corps, Fairfax County, DEA, Stafford County. You've been, like I said earlier, you've been protecting people your entire life. Why run for delegate? What's in it for you?
I don't do any of my jobs for what's in it for me, to be honest. I do it. I tell you what's in it for me. It's the satisfaction that I get to help people. That is it. Because truth be told, as a deputy, and we don't make that much money. We really don't. I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it for my passion of serving. And being a delegate, I think that is the reward. Being able to help people. And not only that, but our state is changing dramatically, and we're losing a lot of our core values. And, for me, the military instilled a lot of them, but, your core values come from your house. My mom raised me well. And I think that by running for delegate, I could help our community become stronger and help the people that actually need help, not just say things and fluff things. I just had my first debate last night. I don't know if I want to talk. Can I talk about it?
Sure. Whatever you want to talk about.
I just had my first debate last night against my opponent. And I tell you, I was nervous. I've never been, I'm an instructor. I could teach, when you know the topic, it's easy to flow, right? But when you're put in a spot and they're asking you questions that you have no idea, what it is, it's hard, and it was hard for me, but I did my best. And the thing about it was that for me was I spoke from the heart. I'm not a politician and I will never claim to be a politician. I am a public servant. I'm doing this not for oh my God, there's Delegate Steinway. I don't care about that shit. I care about, damn, Delegate Steinway is making a change in our community. I want to make our community prosperous. That is it. I want to help my community. I don't care about the title. We don't get, as a delegate, you don't get paid. The pay is very symbolic. I think it's like $12,000 a year or something like that. Great, right? Yeah, I'm the new breadwinner back again, right? No, it's a symbolic thing, and I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it just for the commitment to serve. Yeah, the commitment to serve. That is my goal.
So you've mentioned your wife several times. You've talked about your family throughout the interview.
Oh, we're really going to drag her into this?
Yeah, kicking and screaming, I'm sure. How do you balance personal life and family life?
We jive very well with my wife. It is, we're juggling a lot of things and we're always trying to get ourselves into newer things, which is the fucked up part, right? But it's great because it always surrounds about community, right? My wife has a food truck and, she helps me out in my campaign stuff, and she's supportive of me. She is supportive of me in my job. The poor girl, I come home at 3 a.m., sometimes 4 a.m., depending on how our night went. And she's always waiting for me. She's always awake, just be like, hey, I'm glad you're back. Right. And that's gratification for me, because I know that she appreciates it. But at the same time, I do the same with her, for the food truck. So we gotta always do the support each other out. But at the end, we always make time for each other, no matter how busy we are. We always make time for each other. So we will take 1 or 2 nights a week that her and we go out, we have dinner, and it's our time. Even if we don't go out, stay at the house, open up a bottle of wine, I get my bourbon, sit down, relax, and just chill by ourselves. Is it hectic? It is. No matter how much you put on your plate, right? You always need to find that time for yourself and for your spouse. And even, for us, it's for our kids as well, and my kids are grown, they're in the military. I have one that still lives overseas, and she's a graphic designer, and she's a what do you call it, an influencer on social media. She's great. And then my youngest one, he's going to Germana here in Virginia, and he lives with us, and we have our nights together, and we balance it out. We always got to find that time.
Have you had any role models or mentors who kind of helped you along the way?
Oh, I've had many, many mentors along the way. I think my biggest mentor and my biggest um, follower, right, the person that I follow the most is God. He's who leads me, and he's who paves my path. But yeah, a lot of mentors in my life. If I could name a few,
Yeah.
is that okay?
Yeah.
And please don't get offended if I don't name you. But this is no, yeah. God, like I said, it has been my first, and throughout my career in DEA, and the person that helped me out, there's 2 people that I want to mention, and one is Carson Ulrich, who has been by my side, till this day. He's one of my he helps me out in everything, and Rich Dobrik, who was a section chief, for the programs. He was the one that helped me bring myself back to the States, and my family, and we're friends till this day. And he's always, he lives far away, but we always, we talk on the phone, and he's the one that helped me bring my family back, and Carson was also part of the teams, and he is the other person, that's one of my mentors, who's a big, huge part of my life now, because we live close by. We have a club together. That is a social club. We are pro Second Amendment. We teach people firearm safety and stuff like that. We have a lot of members. It's a really fun club. But Carson has helped me through my career in DEA. He's helped me, through my struggles, for finding a purpose, because he was there, when I lost my job. He's retired, but he was by my side, guiding me and telling me, hey, you'll be okay, motherfucker. You'll find a way. Carson is a type A. That motherfucker is one of my heroes, man. He really is, and he's helped me and my family a lot. And I see Carson almost 3-4 times a week, if possible. And he's helped me with my campaign. He's one of the big fans, that I have, and he's one of my coaches, man. He's one of my coaches in life. And the other person that I want to mention, is Steve Fraga. Steve Fraga is another retired agent from DEA. I met Steve Fraga in my time in Guatemala, and that motherfucker is a legend, right? In DEA, and he's old as fuck. So once he hears this, he's gonna be like, "Yeah, fuck you, motherfucker," right? I fuck with him all the time, but dude, this dude is just such a positive influence. And he was one of my when he retired. from the DEA, and he and I served together overseas. And when he retired from the DEA, he picked up a contracting spot in my unit at the SIUs.
Mhm.
So he was with me the day that I got fired, or that I lost my job, because I wasn't fired. My contract was terminated. But he was with me, and he was one of my shoulders to cry on, right? And he's been there for me and my family throughout all of this. And he still works for the DEA. He's still a contractor with DEA. He's still in the same unit. And yeah, he's one of the people that I look up to as well. And you. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, so to be serious, you've mentioned the word purpose. I don't have a counter. Maybe I'll put a counter in the video. You've used the word purpose like 14 times. At Honor Bound Fit, we're huge on tribe and purpose. So for veterans who are watching this, struggling to find their purpose, what advice would you give them?
Like I said before, I said don't ever quit. You always have to fight for what you believe in, and find that thing that's inside you where you let God guide you on your path. I think that's how I've found my purpose. And I always looked for signs, but I struggling, right? I went from one thing to another, and I was, like I said, my wife was like, "Why don't you look for another contract?" I didn't want that. My purpose is to serve, not to work. You know what I'm saying? There's a big difference. And I found that my purpose is to serve, not to work. I'm not there to, make whatever money. I think my purpose is to serve. And I think that comes from my military background, the service. When we go out and we raise our right hand, and we surrender for our oath, that is to serve. And I know a lot of people take different paths and different careers on it, but our commitment of service is always there.
Yeah, so we're huge on our core values. You probably saw them out there on the wall if you hadn't seen them before, but one of them is be useful. And that's the one that we speak to the most because it's exactly what you're talking about, right? It's find a way to be useful to others. When you're struggling, when you feel like you have no value, find a way to be useful to others.
100%.
You will feel valuable because people will.
100%.
It's reciprocal.
And one of the things that Steve Fraga, used to say all the time, like, "Hey, be the action," and it's true. I say that to my kids. I say that to everybody. You always got to be the action. And I'll tell you one thing that I've struggled, I've suffered, I've been in a deep fucking hole, and nobody outside will ever know it because I will never show it. Every time I'm in front of people, they always tell me, in my squad, in the sheriff's office, you always get that grumpy sergeant or whatever, it's like, the fuck, Steinway, you're always fucking smiling, dude. Like, why so fucking happy all the fucking time, right? And I've got that through my life, through my career. I think one of the biggest purposes, right, and I'm glad that I came back to this, because life is one of our biggest purposes, right? There's so much to life that sometimes people, get struggling, and it's easy to get discouraged sometimes. It really is. But what you said right now reminded me of this, right? Maybe you're in a hole, and it's absolutely, but there's someone else that's fucking worse than we are. There's always somebody that's worse. And you see it. I see it being a deputy. I go to some calls where I'm like, God damn, like, I'm not that fucking bad, I mean, these fucking these people are really fucking going through it.
Yeah.
So that purpose is that, right? Remind yourself that no matter how bad it is, there's always somebody that's worse.
Yeah. I don't know how much you and I have talked about God on 22, but it's 22 miles with 22 pounds on November 22nd. But it's a veteran and first responder suicide prevention event, right? And so it's 22-mile ruck with 22 pounds. That's a lot. It's approachable for people who want to do it. If you really give a shit, you can show up and you can do it.
100%.
Where people, I'm kind of an asshole, right? Because I designed this whole thing.
No, you?
Yeah. So we tell people from the very beginning when they're signing up for the event, like, look, we have logistics vehicles, we have emergency vehicles. If at any point in time you just can't go on any further, we'll get you back to your vehicle. You can hang around until the end of the event, or you can take off whenever you want. There's no shame in it, right? If you can't go another mile or whatever, there's no shame whatsoever in tapping out. What I don't tell them is that every 3 miles we stop to hydrate, have snacks, fix your gear, whatever. And if they don't immediately get in the vehicle right after we stop, they're going to have to hear me tell another story about a veteran who committed suicide, how it affected their family, how it affected their community, et cetera, et cetera. And so suddenly the guys who were like, I'm done at this next checkpoint, I'm just making this checkpoint and I'm tapped out. When you hear about another veteran who committed suicide, you're like, all right, I can do
fuck you, I'm cutting out.
It hurts. It doesn't hurt as much as it hurt them. And there's so much catharsis in it that way.
It is.
That it's, it hurts at the end, but like it could be worse.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Dude, it is. And I know that our veterans go through a lot of this, and military, law enforcement, first responders, it's not an easy job. It's not an easy job. And I'm not saying that other professions are not, but being in the military, being a first responder, it is hard. And a lot of people don't understand that. I come home every night, and my wife knows. I don't talk about work much. There's some people, that I open up. Opening up is good. It really is. And talking to somebody and find that buddy, find that person that you could just fucking call in the morning and say, dude.
No, I tell you what, I've never been law enforcement. I miss the kinetic activity. I miss that environment of being in the shit and kicking in doors and killing bad guys. I genuinely miss that environment. But I've said to anybody who will hear me, I couldn't be a law enforcement officer. And I have that much more respect for them because of that. But it all comes down for me, like, yeah, I may miss that kinetic lifestyle, but what I don't miss and what I don't want for myself is responding to domestic dispute calls on a nightly basis as a police officer, or scraping brains off a pavement every day as an EMT. I could probably be a firefighter, but I'm a little fat for that.
But you need to shave and just leave the mustache.
Right. But even as a law enforcement, even just as a cop, having to, especially you live in the county you protect, yeah?
Yes, sir.
And the idea that I may be sitting in an Awful House with my daughter, who's 11 years old, 2 booths away from somebody I locked up 2 weeks ago, I don't want to be in that environment with my daughter. I want to make the environment safer for her, but I don't want her to be exposed to that lifestyle. And again, the idea that life could just wear a hole in my heart, I don't want to be that person. So I have the utmost respect for those people who do it, because I don't think I could.
Thank you.
That's all for this episode. Just like a rocket, the mission doesn't end at impact. It's about the ripple effect that follows. So stay dangerous, be useful, and we'll see you next time.